Hello and welcome to another SonicLAB. We're looking today at the Behringer Proton, which I've had for a little while. This has been out for quite some time. I mean, it's not a new synth, but it's new to me. I was very familiar with the Neutron, which is the sort of sister or brother or sibling, shall we say, which in many ways is very similar. Same form factor, same oscillators and a number of other things. Let's take a look at the Proton. So as we can see here, pretty much the same kind of concept, lots of similarities. This one is obviously blue, different layout, different functions. We've got the same typeface here on the Proton. Then, of course, we've got the same location of the patch bay. This is slightly different because it has a different set of ins and outs. I like having this on the right-hand side because it means the cables can be away from the knobs. Coming over to this side, so we've got the same 3340 based oscillators. The layout's ever so slightly different because we've got some slightly different functions. Primarily, we've got the Sub Oscillator here, which has got a rotary mix control. Far to the left is just the sub. Hard to the right is just the core oscillator. We can also do the same thing where we've got the switchable waves, or we can sort of blend between them. The only other difference is this top tone wave. This was the same on the Neutron, but what they've done here is it looks like the graphic shows that it's more of a square wave. I think on the Neutron it was more of a sine wave, so it's a sort of like folded doubling up. I'll demonstrate that a bit later on. Then coming to the filters, we've got a pair of the Moffat filters. They call these Moffat because it sounds more trendy, I suppose. Same thing, they're designed by, actually, Keith Moffat. Just sort of point out, Keith Moffat was the guy who designed the filters for the Neutron, based in Manchester, the Midas HQ, where they got a lot of excellent analogue boffins. So these are the same multi-mode filters. We've got high pass, band pass and low pass. They're 12 dB, fully resonant, and you've got all the various controls. They run in parallel and you can blend between them, although you can patch them into series by using the patch bay. Nice sounding filters, we'll get onto those a little bit later. We've got a pair of envelopes. These, I think, are digital. On the original, they were analog and they were quite whippy. Seem fine so far. We've got fast and slow mode and retrig mode. Then this is one of the key differences. This is a wavefolder. So we've got amplitude, we've got AM wavefolding, half wavefolding and full wavefolding and bypass, and we can just dial in the amount of symmetry and folds we have here. Pair of LFOs. These are a bit more fully functioned than the one on the Neutron, but at the sacrifice of the rate. The rate doesn't go into as high an audio rate as it did on the Neutron, which is a bit of a shame, but it's okay. We do, however, get the ability to go into one-shot mode, re-trigger, sync, and this is a shift button that kind of tells you what buttons these are attaching to. Similarly, the shift also works on these ASR envelopes. Got a pair of these. We can loop these, bounce them, etc. So yeah, that's another nice bit of modulation function. Then up here we've got the VCA 1 and 2 bias, which means essentially the initial the initial level. External input and main volume. You will notice, that's right, there's no effects on this. There's no, on the Neutron we had a rather crusty digital delay, but we could modulate it as well. It led to some very nice sounds, I think, and you could get some high feedback. There was also a distortion, which was all right, but the thing that was nice about the distortion is you could had quite a powerful tone control, so you could really warm up and plumb up those sort of bass sounds. We're missing those because we've got all these extra features: CV mix, portamento, attenuation, attenuant. No sample and hold on this one. Okay, so just a quick word about the oscillators, because there's some interesting features about this. I'll switch to this view. As I said, Sub Oscillator, as it comes out of the box, it's a sine wave, 1 octave down. Nice girthy, sort of plenty of doof there, but we can actually access a number of different parameters. Now, you could use the Synth Tribe app, which you could download and access all these different functions. These are the sort of functions you can access, or we can access it via the front panel. So in this instance, I'm going to press and hold range, and now you'll notice that the LFO is blinking. So that is a sine wave. We can change the Sub Oscillator wave to be a triangle, a sawtooth, which is kind of unusual, or a square. So we can set them however we want. I'll just switch this back here. And we can do the same for Sub Oscillator in Oscillator 2 as well. So let's just start off with a really simple basic sound. We've got sawtooth into the filter. We've got that filter in low pass mode. Bring a bit of the sub in. Then we'll bring the second oscillator in. It's got some nice low, hasn't it? There is a bit of internal distortion by the sound of things. But that Moffat filter's it's got the same sort of plummy quality. Perhaps it's a little less than on the Neutron, but it still sounds... But you can hear it driving. There's no way to sort of reduce the level of the oscillator into the filter. I suppose we could go out of oscillator 1 into an attenuator, then out of an attenuator into the filter, I guess. So we can drive it a bit. But that would be the way that you would have to do that. So that gets rid of that bit of distortion. So we can clean it up. Detune that a bit. Maybe go to a pair of... That's quite nice, isn't it? And then if we go to the filter blend... the parallel. So we've got a high pass and low pass together, that's quite nice. Yeah, quite nice, but I think you've just got to watch the level into the filters because it can drive a little bit just with the default routing. Let's have a quick listen to some pulse width, of course. We can patch that up. Let's just come out of the LFO bipolar into the pulse width 1. Let's try the tone wave. It's an interesting. But there's a sort of an interesting sort of variations of tone. So I'd say it doesn't sound exactly the same as a Neutron, which I guess is probably the question you were going to ask me. So let's go and have a listen to the Wavefolder, because it's something that's a sort of a new addition in this area. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch this to pressing range and parametric. Now makes this a switchable waveform on the oscillator. Let's go to a sine wave, because that's traditionally probably what you might do wavefolding on. So we'll go to AM mode. Not quite sure what that does, to be honest. It doesn't seem to do a great deal on this waveform. Then half. That gives us some nice nice additional harmonics. What if we go to full? Yeah, that's what I might expect from a Wavefolder, although it seems a little polite to me, even in full mode. I'm sort of used to hearing much richer harmonics. Maybe, I don't think I've got the filter shut or anything, it just sounds a little bit less radical than I thought. What happens if we bring in... Yeah, it seems to have a bit more go about it, but again, it feels a little polite for a Wavefolder. Nice to have. Just would probably like to have seen a bit more foldiness, more harmonics. I think I've heard more harmonics on other Wavefolders. Okay, here's a little patch where I've got some velocity sorted out because there is an assign output on the patch bay which takes an assignable MIDI controller, which could be a velocity, aftertouch, or it can be the CV of oscillator 1 and 2. I'm coming out of there. You set that, by the way, just pressing and holding sync. I've got 1, 2, 3. 3 happens to be velocity output of there. We can also route aftertouch as well. Press and hold, just fix it. So I'm coming out of there, I'm going to an attenuator. Then I'm coming out of my ADSR and going into the VCA in. Then the VCA CV is coming from the attenuator. So this is going to the attenuator and controlling the voltage. So that means that I've got a little bit of velocity sensitivity. Going into the folder. Put a bit of delay on that, it's quite nice. Got some, a bit of, let's see, a little riff. Bit of envelope depth. Quite like that. And I've got some oscillator sync. I can bring that in maybe to oscillator 2. See what... It's just quite a nice patch, enables a bit of velocity sensitivity. It behaves a little bit sort of on-off. There's not that much of a cadence to it, but it's nice to be able to patch that. We can also do aftertouch and use that as a controller as well. I mean, basically, we've got quite a lot of potential here for patch bays. Usually, if you can't figure out how to do something, you can kind of scratch your head for a minute and maybe patch it up on the patch bay without too much problem. But you will need a few patch cords. It does come with a couple, I think, but I think you're going to need a few more than that. So I would prepare to invest in a few more patch cords and make sure you get the right length as well. So let's just take this basic patch. We're going to modulate the LFO2 with pulse width again. And I'm using LFO2, so we've got all these different modes that we can go into. So if I just come out of sync and one shot, sine, triangle, square, and ramp up, ramp down, so we've got two different ones. We can actually, we put them in sync and we go into one-shot mode. We've got dedicated, take that note, dedicated depth control. We can retrig that. So it can almost be like an envelope. And let's take LFO1, which is actually, so pressing shift brings us over to LFO1, red equals the red here. Let's just see how fast we can go to audio rate. I think it says about 600 Hertz, so not terribly high to the audio rates. Let's take a patch cable and come out of the ASR output and see if that will go any faster. So ASR output into VCF frequency. If we wanted an attenuator, we'd have to go via an attenuator. This is a little bit confusing because there's no light here. So shift, I think, oh yeah, so we want the red one, which is this side. So let's just take that out of there. That's coming out of ASR1 into VCF1 frequency. Doesn't go into terribly high rates, but we can do some interesting bounce and reverse and all kinds. Just running into a little bit of hot frequency there. Be nice to be able to actually patch into the envelope depth or the mod depth on these, because then we could have different attenuation controls for each one, but the envelope depth we haven't got access to on the patch bay, unfortunately. Let's patch some noise up. If I plug in something dummy into VCF1 in, then yeah, that comes in sort of after the oscillators. Let's go to a low pass. Get some nice zappy stuff. We can go fast and slow mode. It's pretty good. And while we're at it, if we come out of here and just plug something into the VCF in, turn the noise down, we can have a fully resonant filter. So it can actually, you know, be a sound source. If we just go into key mode, these are either or, so now. Guess what we could do then is we can come out of oscillator 2 output and go into VCF2 in. And sort of use the blend between the two to add. So we're using VCF1 as just a resonant filter, and then oscillator 2 via VCF2. Get like an octave and a half of keyboard tracking, which is a shame, but I guess, you know, you can't have everything. This is quite an affordable instrument after all. So let's now modulate that filter with oscillator 1. Maybe we can get some modulation going there. So oscillator 1 will go into VCA2 in, then we'll come out of, let's say, ASR1 into the control voltage of that, and then come out of VCA2 and into here. So let's see what that does. So overall, pretty impressive synthesis capabilities for the price. I think if I was to make any changes to this, I would probably maybe sacrifice the Wavefolder, because it's not terribly extreme in its nature, and I might put that sort of rather crusty delay back in, because I just think that really kind of spices it up, and a synth like this with all those harmonics just really does a great job. So just to remind you, we're running an exclusive Patreon discount for our Sonic 30th anniversary. Use the code SONIC30 at checkout to save 15% on all tiers. You can find exclusive video content, ad-free content, Sonic Talk pre-show, gigs of samples and decent sampler instruments, and a whole lot more besides. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time. Take care.